Are you feeling overwhelmed and uncertain about how to scale your business sustainably? Do you have big dreams for your business, but you're struggling to turn them into reality? Or maybe you're just tired of sacrificing your health, your well-being, time with your family, and your own self-care all in the pursuit of success. Not only is this not sustainable, but it can lead to increased stress and decreased productivity in the long run. Don't let the chaos of running a business hold you back any longer. Join our 12-month Real Women, Real Business Mastery program and start building the business of your dream with clarity and confidence. If you're ready to achieve six-figure plus revenue growth, rediscover your passion for your business, and say goodbye to overwork, then let's chat. Book a free business planning session at aboutshaunalynn.com/plan. Check out the link in the show notes. Hello and welcome to the Real Women, Real Business podcast. I am your host, Shauna Lynn Simon, and today I have an extra special guest. And I know I say that sometimes, but honestly, this is one of my favorite guests to have on because we've got a really unique story that we're going to be telling today about how you can be an entrepreneur without actually founding a company yourself. And the person who I'm bringing in is actually someone that I've known for a number of years, because she happens to be the chief operating officer at the boxing gym that I go to, which of course is SydFIT Canada Core for anyone who's not familiar, but I know I've talked about this, SydFIT Health Center, SydFIT Canada Core, all the things. And, I've talked about my boxing journey on this podcast previously, I know. So many of you know how active I am. I've got a great running group of ladies that we run with this group of ladies from boxing as well. And so I wanted to bring in Eryn Lobsinger, who is, like I said, she's the COO of SydFIT, and she's a mother, she's a foodie, she's all things to Syd and all things to SydFIT. Everyone knows her kind of as the person who keeps everything moving. She keeps Syd on track. She keeps all of us on track. And I'm going to start by welcoming her first of all, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her as well. So Erin, first of all, welcome.
Thank you, Shauna Lynn. I'm glad to be here today.
I am so excited to have you in here because I think, we had a bit of a pre-conversation before we hit record here talking about this. And we've talked about this prior to me getting you on the podcast, because I know I'm kind of talking about this for a little while here, but I love your story. And I want you to tell our listeners about your story, about how you came into the role that you're in, because it is such a unique story in that you were not the founder of the company, but you basically run the company now. And I love how you got there. So you were just telling me that you were working in a tool and die shop in like reception. And so tell us a little bit about how that journey led you to SydFIT, to a boxing gym of all places, tool and die to boxing. Totally makes sense.
Yeah, it's been definitely, the last 17 years have been quite the journey for sure. I made the decision because I became a mother for the first time that I didn't want to be kind of restricted to the corporate desk and the 9 to 5. I wanted to be able to be a mother that was available for my kids. And it just happened through a happenstance of the people that I had around me and the opportunities that presented themselves that one day when I was with one of my clients, Syd walked through the door and she basically looked at him and Syd likes to joke. She told him, "Syd, you need my lady. My lady counts every penny. You have to have my lady." And Syd just kind of, in his way with that smile that he gets, he just kind of did the little shrug of his shoulder. He's like, okay. And a week later, I met with him for the first time. And almost 18 years later, here we are now as SydFIT Canada Core.
Unreal. Okay, so you had started your own business as like a freelance bookkeeper, is that right?
Yeah, bookkeeper and small business administration support.
Yeah, and you were telling me that you were really digging into a lot of operation aspects of these businesses that you were working with. And so when you first started working with Syd, was it like on a part-time basis, like as a freelancer then? You weren't actually like an employee of his?
Yeah, so for the first many years, we're at 18 for the first 12 years. Sorry, I had to do a little bit of math in my head. I really was just a strong administrative role for Syd. It started with the bookkeeping, really to help him get an understanding of organizing his invoicing, making sure that his membership, which was growing pretty rapidly at the time, that he was able to stay on top of what they owe him and that he was being paid properly and all of those kinds of things. He probably won't care if I share this, but when I first walked into my meeting with him, he handed me a spiral bound notebook, and this was how he was doing things. So we took the spiral bound notebook first into Excel sheets and then into proper accounting software and then into actual systems and processes that we still continue to develop today. So.
And I will say, knowing Sid the way that I do, none of that surprises me, of course, that he had this spiral bound notebook that, it was organized, I'm sure, in his way. But I think as any business owner can attest to, is growth is very challenging if you don't have someone to take over the things that you are not doing at the optimal level. So bringing you in for that, I'm sure, was just game changing for him. But your role has really evolved over the years. And like I said, you are essentially an entrepreneur who didn't actually start this business. And I'm sure there probably wasn't a point in your life where you're like, what I really love to do? I'd really love to be like this partner in a boxing gym. But of course, for anyone who's not familiar with boxing, there really is such a community around it. So I know that that's obviously a big part of it. But at the end of the day, like, this is still, it's work. Like, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And so how did the role of COO come up? Did you go to Sid with that, or did he come to you and say, like, hey, I want you in a bigger position? How exactly did that come about?
Well, I think over the years, the way that we kind of relied on each other's very different strengths, as you said, Sid and I, we love doing those personality tests, and they always come back the same. We're a dyad. He's very strong on one side. I'm very strong on the other side. Together, we make it happen. And it just kind of, when I started working with Sid, and just a quick little history, my uncle was also a boxing coach. He had the Grand River Boxing Academy when I was a kid. So
Okay.
I kind of always had the boxing aspect of things in my life. I was very close with my Uncle Bill. He was just an amazing role model for me in my life, a testament of patience and grace. And so as Sid and I got to know each other a little bit more, we realized we had these connections from, the way back, and we probably crossed paths, but, obviously didn't recognize each other as adults. And so it was a tie for me back to that love that I had with my uncle. And so it made me naturally just want to gravitate to making this the best possible thing that it could be, and that I would be able to have a role in something like this was just so exciting. And it really played to my administrative strengths, especially in the very beginning, building spreadsheets and teaching Sid how we can make things flow so much easier. And then being able to see the crazy exponential growth that came just from those simple bits of organization that we worked through at the very beginning, before we even transitioned into full-on accounting software and all of that. It just made me so excited about something for the first time, really. You know what I mean? I was like, wow, everything I do, I'm seeing actual effectual change. And so I just wanted more, and I wanted more, and I wanted more. And so whenever Sid would be like, hey, Jegs, do you think you could do a thing? I'd be like, of course I can. And it just kind of, over all the years, it just became this whole our own little culture between the two of us, almost, I would say, of just understanding anticipation and how to get it there and make it successful, or let it fail, because
Sure.
things need to fail sometimes, and we've had many of those along the way, and each one of our failures has been brilliant in some way or another, right? So
Yeah.
it just kind of was like, can you do a thing? Of course I can. Can you do a thing? Of course. Sure. Let's figure it out. Let's do this. How do you want this to look? What should this be? What does this mean for the future? And eventually, here I am, and about 6 years ago, we made the decision where I was going to move away from the remaining clients that I still had. I had ended up in a corporate position as a financial controller. And we were just like, you know what? We're not going to be able to keep going with our dream if we don't just take the plunge. And this is it. Jegs needs to be here full time. And so I said goodbye to corporate life as I knew it. And we've created our own little, I think, even better corporate life, the two of us together. Very
Yeah.
free, very creative, and just very challenging but encouraging. It's been amazing.
Well, and I mean, Sid has had some pretty big dreams over the years since I've known him, and I've known him just a little over 10 years, I guess. And he's definitely had some pretty big dreams over the years. But execution for any entrepreneur can sometimes be where the challenge comes in. Like, I know I want to do this, I know I can do this, and you've got this kind of idea of what it looks like, but we need someone to break down into the nitty-gritty details and into those tasks. And I want to go back to something that you said earlier, though, where you were mentioning how you just started with just some simple Excel spreadsheets to reorganize some of the information, which I'm assuming gave more of like a dashboard kind of view of things. And just the fact that you're talking about how like that made a difference. And I think this is something that everybody needs to hear. As much as we don't love doing some of the administrative stuff, especially if we are creative with all these ideas and we just want to be the doer, we just want to like do the things, do the super fun things that we set out in this career to do. I mean, like Sid started his career to coach boxing. He wants, like, boxing is his life. And with that, of course, comes being a business owner, and he's an amazing business owner as well, an amazing entrepreneur. But it doesn't mean that we have all the things figured out, because we're following this passion more than a plan, and that's pretty common. And so having someone like you come in to be able to, evaluate the overall structure of the business, fine tune some things, and then to your point, like, you start seeing those results right away. I think that people often view administrative tasks as the thing that we have to do, but it doesn't do anything for our business. And I think, like, you're here saying, like, no, this was making a difference. Like, it allows you to tell me a little bit more about some of the things, like, how were you seeing those results translate into the actual business?
Yeah. So we used to say Sid is the dreamer and the schemer, and I was the one that figured out how to make it happen. That was kind of how we operated. And really, it's just everybody loves to be able to come in and do what they're strong at. And we always leave the stuff that we call the grind to the far reaches of our desk. I'll get there. It'll get done. I know it has to get done, and I'll get there, but I'm going to do all the fun stuff first.
Sure.
So I think the beauty of what Sid and I were able to find over the years was he can concentrate on the fun stuff, and the grind stuff is kind of like my fun stuff.
Right.
So we work in alignment together all the time. Not to say that he doesn't have stuff he has to grind on, because we both have parts of our job that are fun and grind and fun and grind. But we were able to really just understand each other's strengths very early, where he's very creative and he could be like, I could do this, I can do that, I can do this. And I'm like, that's fantastic. But the business requires you to also be able to think like this and think like this and think like this. And I think we had just the wonderful benefit of discovering that early. And so that growth that came so fast was because we were talking the same language, but in our own, in our own way, in his creative way and in my administrative way. It was like he was talking English and I was talking French, but at the end of the day, it still ended up being the same language, because it just skyrocketed everything in the direction we needed to go. And it was, I think, a very important part of being able to keep that vision so alive and evolving constantly, that we were then able to not necessarily have stalls in the business where life feels really, really hard for a long period of time and you just want to, pull your hair out. And we were able to just, even with the fails, like, there would be a little dip, but there would be a more immediate rise, and maybe a little dip and a more immediate rise. It never tanked, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think having someone like you to keep things organized is key to that too, because everything that you're talking about with the creative ideas and such, every entrepreneur, I shouldn't say every entrepreneur, but every creative entrepreneur that I ever work with, all of my clients pretty much suffer from the challenges that come with shiny object syndrome. So to have someone who can like keep you a little bit in line and be like, this is great, but we still need to make money. And and I think, Sid has always been very passionate about balancing his community involvement, giving back to a community that's given him so much. But at the end of the day, he still needs someone to say, like, okay, but we need to make sure we're making money. So in order for you to have the luxury of being a philanthropist and being able to do all these wonderful things for charity, we also need to make sure that we're bringing things in the door. And even like to your point of making sure that memberships are caught up and having a system to ensure that it's easy for people to manage their memberships. And as you grow, I mean, I remember when I first started, and so I started at the gym, again, a little over 10 years ago. And I remember Sid and I talking about the membership and everything. And he was like, I don't really know how it works. Like, just, I don't know. Like it's, someone will tell you like what the price is and they'll be in touch with you and they'll get your payment. I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know how, like, it was just very, I was like, okay, well, yeah, sign me up clearly. Cause like, why not? And I'll admit, like, I've never looked back. It's probably one of the greatest decisions I ever made was joining the gym. Some of my most valuable, both personal and professional relationships have come out of that gym. So I'm a true testament to the community that he's built. But I love that he like really gave that over to you. He's like, listen, this is not my jam. And I'm a big advocate of telling business owners to like give away the things that don't need to be your responsibility. And especially when you can find someone like, I think this is the thing that business owners think all the time is like, well, it's such a grind of a job. I don't want to hire someone to do that because they're not going to enjoy it. And meanwhile, you're like, give me all the spreadsheets.
Yes, yes, I'm here. This is what I want to do. I think like you said, the way that Sid kind of owned, like I don't know how that works, and still to this day, he will be the same way because he knows he has a team that can back him up. And the most beautiful part about Sid and what he does is, like you said, like you're like, I don't care, sign me up. Because he has that amazing ability to just make you feel wanted and a part of this. And we'll figure out the administrative stuff. That doesn't matter. Are you happy here? Are you seeing growth here? Are you being challenged here? What are we doing to make sure that you're your best you? It's about you. And he just has that charisma. He doesn't need to know how the stuff works. That's why he has a team. And the team, like for me, like I was explaining to you, Sid's the one who does the talking.
Right.
Erin doesn't do the talking. Sid's the one in the spotlight. That's his jam, as you would say. Whereas I'm like, just let me sit at the back of the room and observe and make sure that I can, do what he sees in his beautiful mind and bring it to fruition. Because at the end of the day, nothing makes us happier than when we have people like you, Shauna Lynn, 10 years you've been with us.
Mm-hmm.
That's a commitment. That is not a small piece of time. So the fact that we have some of our members that have been with us 17, 15, 10 years, Sid's doing it right. I'm doing it right. We're getting it right together. We're just going to keep going with what works, so.
Yeah. And I also want to say, we've been singing Sid's praises quite a bit and for good reason. But I think that you just mentioned how like you're the one who's normally not on in front of the camera. Sid's the one who's in front of the camera. And if anyone who goes to the gym, we know who's behind the scenes making all this stuff happen. And I think you're a bit of the unsung hero though, because you aren't just making things happen. And we're almost downplaying, I think, a little bit about what it is that you do, because it's almost sounding like, well, Sid comes up with the idea and then you just work on executing it. It's not that you don't have your ideas, though. Like you are the one who, like, you are driving this ship, and we all know it.
Yeah. And I appreciate that because for someone like me, because I'm very introverted, it's very easy for me to be just kind of happy in the shadows at the back. But I don't ever want anybody to think that this doesn't consume my life and my thought pattern all the time. I was very lucky that I had the opportunity just over about a year ago to become partner in the business. And even before that, I was constantly like, what's happening? It comes into my dreams. It comes to me at 2 a.m. What's the next thing? What do we need? Where are we going? What's the team at? What's the community? What's the next event? It does become consuming. And then when I became an actual partner in the business, it became consuming in a slightly different way in my brain space. That change of ownership was actually kind of welcome to me, because for many years I felt like I owned part of the business because I've poured so much of myself into it. And then to have that little piece of paper that says you actually do own part of the business that you've been building all these years was wonderful. And not that it took any stress away, but it was just a wonderful little tip in my cap. I'm not really a celebratory person, but that piece of paper was like, yes, I did it. I
Yeah.
did a thing, you know? So, and it's just, I can't, I can't understate enough the difficulties in allowing yourself to be that person that doesn't take the forefront of all of the accolades, because sometimes, like you said, you feel like you are overlooked. I struggle sometimes with imposter syndrome. I feel like I don't really belong here because I don't have this or I don't have that knowledge or whatever. And then I look around and I'm like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
This
Hold
is,
up.
no one knows more about this except for maybe Sid. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So um, it's it's really nice to hear that, and I'm very lucky. I hear that from the members all the time, and hear it from them because I don't really, you know, they don't know me. They don't really know my face. They know my email, you know,
Right.
and, and they know, you know, if I'm fixing something for them or whatever. And at the events, I get to kind of mingle a little bit. So it's nice when I do get that back from them. And it was a bit of a hard battle for me because for a long time I didn't want them to know who I was. And Sid used to force me into the ring and get me to talk at events so that people would know who's, you know, doing this with him. And I never understood the reason why until many, many years that we were into this together, that he understood the value of people knowing that it's not just him, that
Yeah.
he had me, that he has our team of trainers. Um, and so sometimes even still taking that compliment is difficult for me, but I've gotten much better at it. And I do really appreciate it because it's hard work.
It is
It's,
hard work. And
it's hard work.
you touched on the imposter syndrome, which I think like every woman especially has experienced imposter syndrome, and especially entrepreneurs. And it's so common because as entrepreneurs, we don't have the technical training for half the stuff that we end up finding ourselves doing. And yet it doesn't mean that we can't be good at it. And it doesn't mean that you don't learn those things, not just like trial and error, but there's a lot of resources out there. You seek the resources, you find the way, you stumble through it, you make it work. And for you to be able to, as you said, be a partner in this business and have that bit of ownership above and beyond just how you felt like an owner. Now you're actually an owner of the business. And so you went from owning your own business and taking on clients to letting go of all of your clients, joining another company because you were so passionate about it, and you put everything into that. And then here you are as a partner in the business. And it all started because one of your other clients introduced you, and you started doing some bookkeeping and admin stuff part-time, and now you're a partner in the business. And so one of the reasons why I really wanted to share your story, like I said, was because, we have this idea that the entrepreneurial journey is sort of defined by, I have to start my own business from the ground up, put that stake in the ground. It's all my blood, sweat, and tears in it. It's still your blood, sweat, and tears in this. But because the business would not be what it is now if it wasn't for you coming into it. Sid is aware of that. Every single person at SydFIT is aware of this. You are aware of this, but to actually be able to define it and say, this is a partnership. We've been acting like partners for years. And that takes a lot for an entrepreneur to say, I am going to, like, you have invested so much in me, I'm going to invest in you as well. I'm going to bring you into this in a partnership way. And I mean, to your point, it doesn't reduce the stress. If anything, it probably adds to it a little bit because now you
Yeah.
really have skin in the game. But at the same time, though, it solidifies that relationship, and that's really powerful. And I'm glad that you like, thank you for sharing that vulnerability of, the challenges that you've had in your own mind about things and about where you're at. And yeah, it is hard because there's a lot of people who are introverts who know they should be embracing the spotlight, but it's not your comfort zone. And so there are ways to still ensure that you are celebrating a little bit, like for you to be able to take a step back and just kind of look at things and be like, I built this, not you alone, no, but you built this to what it is today, and you can really take credit for that. And that feels really good. That's really powerful. So like, good for you on that.
Yeah. Though I think the one thing that I love the most about my entire journey with Sid is the way I've been able to show my kids, you know, like you don't have to be defined by what your counselor in high school tells you to go to school for. Otherwise, I'd be in a daycare right now, with
Right.
screaming children all around me. So, being able to show them that you can do whatever you want as long as you keep your mind open and understand it's going to be hard work. You have to be committed to the understanding that whenever you work outside of the box, it's going to require whatever percentage more of you. And there's going to be times where you want to cry yourself to sleep. And there's going to be times where you wake up and you're just like, my life is so amazing.
Yeah.
Why doesn't everybody live their life like this? How could you ever go back to, standing on a line in a factory or being a bookkeeper in some corporate firm? I've been so, blessed with opportunities through all of the people that I've known, not just Sid, because like I said, when I first met Sid, I was doing bookkeeping for many different clients across many different industries. And all of those industries taught me something new that I was able to bring back and relate to this.
Right.
And really, that's what kind of kept Sid and I just moving forward. Well, what's the next thing? Oh, well, but this thing is for a whole different industry, but the model maybe could work for us here, or
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And if I wouldn't have had those opportunities, I don't know that we would be as strong as we are now. So not just what I've learned from Sid, because we are a constant learning machine, but everything that I've been able to absorb from all the other opportunities that came my way before I just became SydFIT centric, and it's all important to where we are now. So
Yeah, I'm glad that you're bringing this up, because you also mentioned something earlier about the failures and how you learn from those, and you learn from all of the experiences. And I often hear people say, oh, I wish I hadn't done this. I wish I hadn't worked that job. I wish I hadn't dated that person. I wish I hadn't decided to move to this city. But there's nothing to regret about any of those decisions, because you wouldn't be who you are. I mean, like, one of the big things for me, I've shared quite candidly on this podcast about the loss of my father a few months back, and he lived with MS for 30 years. And at his celebration of life, in his eulogy, I'd said to everyone, I said, I'd love to say that I wish my dad never had MS, but I wouldn't be who I am if he hadn't. The lessons that I learned from it, not only about MS, but accessibility, about patience, about grace, about overcoming challenges and dealing with adversity, like all the different things, I wouldn't have learned those lessons. So no, I don't wish MS on anyone, and especially not my own dad. But at the same time, we couldn't live our lives wishing something didn't happen, because that's not the reality. You can't go back into the past and change things. I don't care how far evolved science and AI and everything else gets. I don't think it's ever going to be possible. So therefore, we got to play the hand that we have at any given moment. So you mentioned that there were some things that, you've tried that were always like, you love some of the failures. Is there any that stand out that you would be willing to share? And it's okay if you say no, but I know sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, I bombed so bad here, but here's what came out of it. If you happen to have
yeah.
one, I'd love to hear it.
Um, I think luckily enough, we never had any major bombs, so
Right.
nothing that ever set us back on our butt and was like, oh crap, we got to rethink everything at this point. But like you said, I have no regrets. That's very important to me. Every decision made, whether it was made and it went well, and it was made and it went bad, there was a reason at that moment. In that moment, that decision had to be made. So even when we've done things over the years where we've been like, oh, we're going to try this program, or we're going to try this promotion, and we'll sit there and we'll be like, why didn't that work? That was like so perfect. That's beautiful. And nobody wanted it. You know what I mean? And sometimes even with, team members that we've brought on, one of the hardest lessons we've learned over the years is how to really identify when a person is at their prime with us and still good and growing with the team, and we're at their point where they need to move on into something that might be bigger and better for them, whether that's a good exit or a bad exit. There's always going to be both in life, but it's just understanding that, okay, that didn't work, so what's next?
Yeah.
People have often asked me, over the years, you're a single mom, you work like a fiend, how do you just do it? And I'm like, well, but the next choice is what's next. I have to wake up today and I have to make the next choice. So what's the next choice? And let's just get it done. And
Yeah.
sometimes those choices blow up in your face. And sometimes those choices are like, holy crow, this is the most amazing thing. And it launches us faster than we ever thought we could go. But I can't really say that there's any one particular moment where I was like, oh man, that was a doozy. Um,
That's totally
because
fair. Yeah.
yeah, because I wonder sometimes when people think of failure, if they only think failure has to be this big monumental thing. I fail every day, Shauna
Yeah.
Lynn. There
Yeah.
there are things that are just little, and just like the penny in a bank account, if you spend all the pennies, you're gonna hemorrhage all your money and not understand where it went. The little failures, if you don't acknowledge that there's little failures that you learn from every moment in your day, you're never going to learn anything moving forward. How does a baby learn to walk if they don't fall down every time they try and take that step? And there's, today, like I failed at getting two major tasks done that I wanted to accomplish today. That's not happening. Those are getting rescheduled. So it's not that it's a failure, but it's a reevaluation and a new
Yeah.
choice that's being made, and we're going to get them done. It's just not going to happen today, or, something that I tried to fix on the training floor did not stay fixed and fell apart again. And so we gotta fix it again. And that's okay because we learned why it didn't stay fixed in the first place. So Sid really works amazingly with me as a mentor. Over all these years, I would have to say, even if I didn't work for SydFIT anymore, I would never let that man go. He has been the biggest rock for me in so many ways, both in my business mind growth, but also in how I approach failure. And we actually, for the last little while, we don't allow that word anymore. We don't say failure. We don't fail at anything. We just understand how we need to do it the next time.
Love it.
So yeah, so if we don't ever let ourselves learn how to do it better the next time, how would we ever grow? How would we ever keep this community that we love interested and engaged and challenged and coming to us? So yeah, we love to learn how to do it better the next time every
That
day.
is, and that's so beautiful. Like that is something that translates for your personal life, for your professional life, that in business, in all the things that we do, that just translates so perfectly. And I'm sure for Sid coming from the boxing background, I mean, there's a saying in the fitness and athletic industry of like, you got to put in the reps, right? And it's the same thing in business. You got to put in the reps, and putting in the reps means that it's not going to go perfectly. I loved your analogy of talking about, the child learning how to walk. It's the same thing that, if you were to step into SydFIT today and say, I want to learn how to box, do you think you're going to be in a fight next weekend? No, there's a lot to learn. I've been going for 10 years and I got to say, I still got some work to do.
17 years there, with the exception of when I was, very big with baby and didn't feel like working out. There's a very rarely a week that goes by that I don't get to have some technical time with Sid on the focus pads. And that's the beauty of both the sport and the business, right? There's always more fine tuning to do. Always,
But
always, always. The perfect
those
job
little
is never
tweaks.
perfect. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
There's always
Yeah.
a little tweak that can be done. And I think that having that inspiration though to continue to challenge yourself, and having a partner like that who encourages the challenge of like, let's aim high, let's try the big thing, and even if it doesn't go perfect, let's still do it, and not you don't have to worry about, to your point of like, the word failure doesn't even exist there anymore, so you don't have to
Yeah.
worry about it. all coming crashing down and getting yelled at, or someone, is thinking like, oh, I can't believe you did that. Or, it's a
Yeah.
matter of, okay, so how do we do this bigger, better next time? And I mean, you alluded earlier about how you put on different events. Like it's not just a training gym there, and it's an
Yeah.
intense training gym. Like you've got your fitness clientele, you've got your athletes, you've got your full out events that you're putting on. You've got the community support. There's so many different facets to the things that you're doing. So everything that you touch is not going to turn to gold. That's just impossible. But you wouldn't be able to do all the things that you do if you didn't keep trying to do bigger and better things. And it wouldn't be where it is today if you weren't continually doing bigger and better things. I gotta tell you, I mean, like if I was at a gym that wasn't evolving, I think any business that I associate with, both personally and professionally, I want to see them growing. I want to see them adapting and changing. Don't get me wrong, there's something to be said for, like, I'm sure you've dealt with it with us members over the years of people don't always like change. Sometimes change is not the most comfortable, but I'd be
Yes.
disappointed if you weren't changing and evolving. And I mean, for myself, for example, I used to train personally with Sid until very recently. And that was a choice that I made, not because I don't love Sid, but just because of some changes that were happening at the gym, that the direction of our training was going one way. And I'm like, I actually would rather go in a different direction. So I chose another team member. That's a testament to the team members that Sid has, where it's like, this coach over here, I'd like him. Can I get him? So it was nothing personal. It was nothing, Sid fully supported it. I still get to see him every week when I'm in there, of course. But what the direction that he was going didn't support the focuses that I had. And so I love the beauty of like, because of how he runs his business, I knew that he was going to have no issues with me saying, I don't want to go in that direction anymore. I want to go this way. Instead, I'm gonna take this coach and do it with him so you can continue on your journey in that direction. No problem. And it's just, that's the same thing in business, is that sometimes we've got to branch off in different ways, and we've got to do what feels right and what makes the most sense. And not everyone's always going to be on board. I'm sure over the years, as changes happen, some members leave, not many, but some members leave. And that's just a part of life. You lose some clients, you gain some more. But what you've both done is you've created this vision, you know where you're heading, and you're taking the steps towards that. And if things have to fall off from the old way of doing things, from the old business, that is a part of life. We have to upgrade things. Your car is not going to stay on the road for 20 years if you don't make a few upgrades along the way. So we want to make sure that this car is staying on the road.
Yes, absolutely. And I think like you said about encouraging the change, I would say sometimes, a lot of times, maybe even, we try to embrace the change, not just encourage it, but hold it close to us because it is a necessary thing. So if you're afraid of change, that can be both good and bad. I really feel like in my own life and in the business and with conversations I've had with people, we don't see real deep rooted change in a person until they hit a pain point that they can't deal with anymore. There's
Mm,
always a tipping point to long-term habitual change in a
right.
person's life, for better or for worse, because all things in life, for better or for worse. What I love so much about my entire team here is that they've all changed in the short or the long time that they've been with us as an athlete, as a coach, as a trainer, whatever it is. I can say in every single one of them, I've seen that point in their head where they've reached the point where they're like, I just can't be this level anymore. I have to be more than this. And the long-term habitual change comes into play. And if you don't embrace the idea that change can be good or bad, doesn't matter. You still have to embrace it, love it, own it, let it go. And then that's when you're going to see the real skyrocketing, of forward momentum instead of
Yeah.
maintenance or falling off. So we love to hug the change like it's a big teddy bear.
I love that. And so I got one more question before we wrap things up here, because we've talked about this a little bit about how you went into sort of that freelancing bookkeeping as a way to be able to have more flexibility to be able to be the mom that you wanted to be. And you were able to do that. You did have that flexibility, but of course now you're also, running a very much a growing large business and still balancing mom duties and everything else. And, how do you balance all of that? How does that continue to work for you?
Well, not without a lot of boundary setting, which for the first number of years was very difficult because I loved what I was doing so much. I realized that I had workaholic tendencies that I never knew I had before because in the corporate world, I didn't care. I punched that clock. You know what I mean? But when it came to this, I was working hours that I wasn't billing for. I was just doing anything and everything I could to make sure that this thing that I had discovered a love for was going to be successful. And so it was hard for me to draw the line and turn off the emails and all those kinds of things. And honestly, it's only been in the last, maybe COVID years where I know everybody hates COVID. They blame it for a lot of things. To me, COVID was almost a blessing. Was it hard? Absolutely. I got to be at home with my kids so much. And coming out of it, I understood that I have them for a breath of time in my life. My oldest is just about to leave me for university in September. It's going to be beautiful, but at the same time, oh my God, my oldest is leaving me for university in September. It's such a small piece of our life that we get to be that real hands-on parent. And so for the last number of years, what I've really tried to do is define my boundaries of time. So, after 6 p.m. on a day that I have my girls with me in the evening, we have family dinner with my parents, no exceptions. And I don't answer emails unless I choose to, because it's a key relationship that I'm building or working through, or that I value very high. And that's usually my team. If they need me, I try to be available to them. But otherwise, no, after 6 p.m., there's no work. That's not a thing. And, on the weekends when it's me and my girls, we are out in the world and I'm not working. And, just trying to really live in that moment with them. They're teenagers now. In 4 years, potentially my house is empty, and then I can be all the workaholic I want to be again. You know what I mean? I can take that deep dive off that diving board into the pool of business and never come back up if I want to. But for this time right now, I'm just loving that I drew that line in the sand.
Good for you.
This is my family time, and it's not just we're sitting at home on the couch, which we do a lot, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
But like, for example, for Christmas this year, I didn't buy gifts. I bought us experiences because I knew this is my last year with my oldest before they leave for university. So I bought us tickets and trips to everything.
Amazing.
And that was it. You know what I mean? Time spent, experiences lived, opportunities for conversations. When I first started working for myself, I didn't allow myself that. I was home, I was mom, I did the laundry, I cooked the dinner, I put them to bed. But in every other second in between every one of those breaths, I was working. It's a horrible cycle to break free of. And I really encourage people to know that is okay. It is okay to say, I am not going to answer my emails after 6 p.m. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to chew slowly. I'm going to have a conversation with my family. And I'm allowed to have that. That's essential to my spiritual well-being, my emotional well-being, how I feel like I am as a mom. I quit the corporate world so that I could be a mom. Right. And for many years, I didn't. I failed myself there. You know what I mean? So now, how am I going to do it better? I can't do that anymore. So I cling hard to it. And I'm very lucky that my team and that Sid, they're very good at it. If I post in the chat and I'm like, hey guys, this weekend I am completely offline. So you are on your own. Don't let the house burn down. I'll see you on Monday. And they respect it. And that's, for me, the most beautiful gift that they can give me is that when I say it's family time, they're good. They're like, nah, we'll figure that out, or it can wait until the morning. I've been very, very blessed with having that support around me. And so I don't think I would be able to really still be passionate where we are now, 18 years on, if I didn't have that amazing support and encouragement to have work-life balance. I left the corporate world because it was not valued there. And I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Had to
And
find a better way.
one of the beautiful things that you touched on too, that I think is so important to reiterate here, is that you were saying how you were leaning into those workaholic tendencies because you genuinely loved what you do. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges that entrepreneurs have, is they're like, but I love what I do so much I would do it for free. That doesn't mean that you need to drop all your boundaries and allow it to creep into every nook and cranny of your life, because we do require that balance. And I like to call it more of a work-life integration. I think that exactly what you described is a perfect example of
I
exactly
like that.
that, because I think work-life balance, people have this idea that you have to have like this very strict and rigid structure to it. No, work-life integration means that you get to make up the rules and you get to make them up as you go. And so to your point, you're saying you're not checking emails after 6 o'clock, but you might, if you know that there's something important coming in, or if there's a message that comes in from your team that you feel like you can help them out and support them with, and they're not abusing it. Like there's a beautiful balance to all of that. But at the end of the day, they are going to be integrated and overlapped. And that is something, you mentioned this earlier, that you want your girls to see what you're doing and see that the options that they have going forward. And this is a great example of, they're watching mom kick butt and be this powerful businesswoman while she can still be the mom. So you're not ignoring them, but they're also seeing how much you value what you do and how important it is to you. And that there are times where you do have to make some of those little exceptions in order for the greater good, basically. But that doesn't mean that you're sacrificing. We shouldn't be sacrificing ourselves, our relationships, our well-being, any of that for the good of the business, because you can't take it with you.
Yeah. I think the other side of the equation too is work needs to balance with life, but life also has to balance with work. And one of the things that with my girls, I never hid from them or made them feel a way about when I do have to work and it's our time together.
Right.
When we travel, it's always like, okay, guys, we're going on this trip, but probably the first hour and a half of my morning, before you're even up or before we're even looking to start our day, Sid and I are going to video call. We're going to have our daily meeting. We're going to check in on the business, because if I don't, I won't be able to shut it off. I have to have both sides of my coin, right? Even when it's a heavy side of the family time, if I don't know that everything's okay, then that ticka, 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 ticka,
Yeah.
ticka. And then how do you enjoy your time with your family, right? So I always just kind of made it clear from them, we're together. I need this 90 minutes for the business, and then we have the whole day to do as we please. And letting them know that I'm bringing them into my work life as well, that they're just as important as my work. So I'm going to tell you what my work requires. I'm not just going to tell you, don't bother mommy for the next 90 minutes. No, I'm going to tell you what my work requires so that you know I'm trying to respect you and you know how to respect me. And my girls love it here. They were with me at our open house recently, and my youngest is, how do I help with more events, Mom? I want to be more part of this. My oldest kind of unceremoniously ended up being the overseer of the kitty corner. Everybody was playing with slime and coloring and drawing and watching movies, and I didn't ask them. They just understood. This is Mom's work. We want to help Mom with her work because she's always made work and us feel the same level of value. Right. I mean, obviously, I love my kids a little bit more than I'm ever going to love a business, but I want them to love what this place is as much as I love this place myself, so that when I have to do something that the business requires me of, I'm not letting them down. I'm not shocking them with needing to be at work. I'm not disassociating them from what I do. It's all the same to me. It's all love. I love them. I love my job. I want my job to love them. I want them to love my job. So,
And that's leading by example. And that's beautiful. Yeah, I love
yeah.
it.
So,
Oh, well, I think you know what, that is actually a perfect place to leave off, I think. I truly can't thank you enough for sharing your story here today. I think this is going to resonate with so many of our listeners. And I truly appreciate the time that you've taken to be vulnerable, to share all the ups and downs of everything that you've dealt with, and to let us in behind the scenes a little bit of what it's like to become a partner so many years into a business. It's really beautiful. Congratulations on all that you've done. Thank you for joining me.
thank you, Shauna Lynn. It was fantastic. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. And don't forget that if you're liking what you're hearing here, don't forget to leave us a review, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. And of course, as always, the best way that you can show your support, not only for this podcast, but for your fellow female entrepreneurs, is to share this episode with someone that you think just might need this message right now. And until next time, keep thriving.